Chapter 461, the fifth tier. The sand-howl tiger was surprisingly brawny. Even when its limbs sank into the flowing mud from Zhang Xiaohu's soul seed, it still managed to leap into the air and landed on top of the rock barrier. The rock barrier was 10 meters tall and jagged in an irregular pattern. The sand-howl tiger was standing atop it, its eyes fixed on Zhang Xiaohu, who was the closest to it. It leapt from the high ground, its figure still covered in a thick blood shadow. Mo Fan was rather familiar with the power from that layer of crimson shadow, as the might from his blood tabi was fairly similar to it. The shadow granted the sand-howl tiger formidable strength. Normally, demon beasts like it could utilize its strength better on the sturdier ground of the Gobi Desert. The creature was most likely starving if it came all the way to these sandy hills searching for food. The jagged rock barrier served as a perfect springboard for the sand-howl tiger. It lunged forward swiftly and fiercely. Zhang Xiaohu had once again underestimated the creature's speed. He was already in the midst of casting the spells, yet neither the wind track nor the earth wave was quick enough to escape from the sand-howl tiger's pounce. The sand-howl tiger was inches away. Zhang Xiaohu could see the fangs in its giant mouth, and a foul stench swept in his direction, with an overwhelming sense of fear. Light protection. Sacred shield. Zhang Xiaohu, who was standing not far away, reacted quickly. His light element spell immediately formed extremely sturdy-looking shields surrounding him. The sand-howl tiger slammed into the sacred shield, and it felt like it had crashed into a metal ball. It knocked Zhang Xiaohu a distance back, while shaking its head on the spot, like it had a concussion. Zhang Xiaohu was perfectly unharmed. He cast a grateful look at Zhao Manyan, who responded by patting his chest, signaling him, "Go ahead and do whatever you want, I'll look after your safety." Zhang Xiaohu nodded, and was convinced that everyone that Mo Fan had assembled was an elite among magicians. They knew how to work together without unnecessary signaling, which relieved him greatly. The truth was, Zhang Xiaohu did not have any offensive capacity. His main role in the army was the vanguard in charge of disrupting the enemy's tempo. In simpler words, he was in charge of aggroing the mobs. As the demon beasts put their attention on him, it would allow the other magicians to cast their spells without being interrupted. With Zhang Xiaohu as the vanguard, Mo Fan and Chen Yi immediately cast their intermediate spells. The sand-howl tiger, still dizzy from the previous collision, immediately faced two powerful attacks, which it dodged in a panic. The sand-howl tiger's evasion was fairly outstanding. Out of the two intermediate magicians, only Mo Fan's relatively swift thunderbolt was effective, knocking the sand-howl tiger back into the quicksand that Zhang Xiaohu had set up. Half of the sand-howl tiger's body sank into the sand before it could recover and crawl out from the pit. The sand had a high viscosity, mainly because of the earth element soul seed they had obtained from the Shijiao Valley. The sand-howl tiger was unable to move freely, as half of its body had sunk into the sand. It was like a beast captured in the trap set up by hunters. No matter how fiercely it was struggling, it made no difference, as the more it struggled, the faster it was sinking into the sand. Giant Shadow Spike. Mo Fan had no intention of hiding his strength, and immediately cast the Shadow Element spell. The giant Shadow Spike nailed the sand-howl tiger's struggling shadow. A dark energy transformed into a binding gas, chaining the sand-howl tiger's shadow. The sand-howl tiger could no longer move, only watch its own body sink slowly into the sand. The quicksand pit and the giant Shadow Spike were a perfect combo. The muscular sand-howl tiger had no chance of utilizing its strength, and was soon eliminated by the party. "It seems like the infamous Dunhuang demon tiger isn't as terrifying as I imagined," Zhang Xiaohu smiled. "The sand here is soft, so your earth element soul seed's power is significantly increased." The sand-howl tiger was kited to its death before it could utilize its full strength, agreed Ling Ling. "Let's see if the sand-howl tiger had some kind of rare bone or skin. Those are the valuable things," Mo Fan said with gleaming eyes. Mo Fan had killed lots of demon beasts, thus he was not as pleased as Zhang Xiaohu after eliminating a warrior-level creature. He was more concerned about money. Unfortunately, the sand-howl tiger did not have what Mo Fan was looking for. Even its soul was only an ordinary soul remnant. He stored the soul remnant inside the little loach pendant, treating it as a raw material to refine soul essences, as he was aiming to improve his shadow element basic spell to the 4th tier. "Say, Mo Fan, Why didn't you try improving your basic spells to the 5th tier? Asked Zhao Manyan, raising his eyebrows. Chen Yi, who was standing beside them, opened her eyes wide. The 5th tier? Does that mean this guy has already improved his basic spells to the 4th tier? The Zhao family was considered a famous business-renowned family in the magic community. One could find marketplaces that belonged to their family in most cities across the provinces, thus many people referred to their family as a Tahao. Despite that, she had never seen any renowned family that was willing to invest in improving someone's basic spells to the 4th tier, let alone the 5th tier, which was basically a fantasy. Screw you, leveling up a basic spell from the 4th tier to the 5th tier requires a total of 7 warrior-level soul essences. Give me the money, and I'll improve them right away, cursed Mo Fan. Zhao Manyan had made it sound easy, but if the higher tiers only needed servant-class soul essences, he would actually consider living deep in the woods for a while, improving his basic spells further. However, the resources needed for the 5th tier were too dumbfounding. 7 warrior-level soul essences would sum up to more than 100 million, which was enough to get himself the wing magical equipment for Xinxia. On top of that, the odds of finding a warrior-level soul essence were a lot lower. Even if Mo Fan managed to collect over 100 warrior-level soul remnants, it was not enough to refine a complete soul essence. Improving his basic spells to the 5th tier was a strenuous commitment. Let's move on. Stop wasting time here. You'll have plenty of work to do at the Drifting Sand River, emphasized Ling Ling. The most dangerous part of their adventure was the Drifting Sand River. Even though they had brought Xinxia the Psychic along, it did not guarantee that they could cross the place unharmed. Chapter 462 Drifting Sand River. The party had only briefly proceeded on with their journey when they saw a group of people rushing toward them through a cloud of sand ahead. As the group came closer, Mo Fan's crew realized that they were also a party of hunters, who seemed relatively young. They had to be quite talented among magicians. When they arrived and saw the Sand Howl Tiger's corpse, their expressions immediately sank. A female magician who was slightly tanned among them approached Mo Fan's group furiously and snapped while pointing her finger at them. How shameless are you guys? We've been hunting the Sand Howl Tiger for half a day and injured it, yet you guys have stolen our prey after we lost track of it for a while. Don't you know that as hunters, you're not supposed to take other people's prey? The tanned female magician spoke imposingly, her voice sharp and screeching, making everyone feel uncomfortable. Auntie, the Sand Howl Tiger was already charging at us when we saw it. Are you telling me that we're supposed to let the beast eat us alive if we're not allowed to kill it? Zhao Manyan was the first to blurt out unpleasantly. Who are you calling an auntie? I'm not even 30. The tanned female magician was infuriated. Oh, but your temperament is the same as those aunties dancing at the public squares when their spot has been taken. Mo Fan was fond of making sarcastic remarks too. He immediately joined in and sang a duet with Zhao Manyan. The tanned female magician pulled a long face, and seemed to have an urge to teach the two disrespectful guys a lesson. However, the rather manly leader with a black beard stepped forward and stopped her. He preferred not to start a fight here, since they were currently in the demon beast's territory. It was better for the hunters to help one another, even though they felt it unfair that their prey was stolen just like that. They had injured the Sand Howl Tiger in the first place, thus the creature's strength was no longer at its peak. No wonder the Sand Howl Tiger was so easy to deal with, Zhang Xiaohou realized. When fighting the Sand Howl Tiger, Zhang Xiaohou had already noticed that the beast was covered in wounds and bruises, so he thought the beast had fought against some other creature before. It turned out that it had fought a group of hunters, and fled when it realized that it was no match for them. Somehow, it had stumbled into Mo Fan's party, who ended up taking advantage of the situation. My brothers, we fought the Sand Howl Tiger for quite a while. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to kill it so easily. How about this? Let us take a look if the Sand Howl Tiger's corpse has any rare bones, rare blood, rare skin, or something else, and we'll split the loot in half, said the leader with a black beard in a friendly manner. However, Mo Fan was not happy. These idiots had lost track of their prey, and demanded that the prey was theirs after such a long time, and even asked them to split the loot in half. In their dreams, the Sand Howl Tiger was quite infamous, and its corpse was quite valuable too. Even without the rare loot, a corpse in good condition would still worth around 100 to 200,000 RMB. Mo Fan would not mind discussing other things, but when it came to money, Mo Fan was not willing to give a single cent to others. How shameless, and you call yourself hunters, humph. Ling Ling was not fond of the demand either. Little girl, who do you think you're talking to? The prey was ours to begin with. Come down here and I'll teach you how you should behave yourself. The tanned female magician was enraged, snapping while pointing at Ling Ling. We're just following the rules set by hunters. How is this being shameless? The leader with a black beard pulled a long face. Hasn't someone taught you to respect your seniors? Retorted Ling Ling. Seniors? Ha 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 ha. You're funny. Look at how young you are. You must be a bunch of kids running away from your high school and fooling around. If we didn't injure the sand howl tiger beforehand, you all would be a pile of bones by now. You should be thanking us. The sand howl tiger isn't some creature that can be handled by someone with only talks like you. The tanned female magician mocked them. She was extremely annoying, and mumbling non-stop. Meanwhile, Ling Ling took out her hunter badge and showed it to her. The tanned female magician opened her eyes wide. Her mouth could not put on the brakes in time. She was staring at Ling Ling in disbelief, shifting her focus back and forth to the hunter badge. A hunter badge was similar to magic equipment, and could only be bound to a magician's soul. It was impossible to fake it. The group of hunters was only a bunch of advanced hunters, who still had to gain a mountain of points to achieve the ranks of Hunter Master. On top of that, the Hunter Union had requested that lower-ranked hunters respect their seniors. They were not allowed to compete with the higher-ranked hunters for their prey, nor were they allowed to disrespect their seniors. The tanned female magician was wearing a fascinating expression, and could not find words for a long time. The unpleasant expression on their leader's face stiffened too. If the little girl was already a Hunter Master, how about the others in her party? They had underestimated these people. No wonder the sand howl tiger had already turned into a corpse after they had only lost track of it for a short period of time. The leader with a black beard and the tanned female magician quickly ran away with their crew after embarrassing themselves. It was their fault for being greedy, demanding Mo Fan's crew to split the loot when they had lost track of their prey in the first place. They were unlucky enough to stumble onto a freak like Ling Ling. It was only an insignificant interlude. The party proceeded with their journey along the pulsating sandhill. The desert was not as boundless as it seemed. After more than a day's journey, the vast sands had turned into a barren, rocky land ahead. The odds of stumbling into a sand howl tiger increased on the rocky terrain. The group tried their best to avoid the beasts, yet they had no choice but to fight when the battle was inevitable. With Zhang Xiaohou in the team, the stuff he had learned in the army proved to be extremely useful. He was able to nimbly lure the sand howl tigers away when it was impossible to avoid contact with them. It was tough for the team to face 3 sand howl tigers simultaneously, thus most of the time, Zhang Xiaohou would be sprinting across the rocky terrain, luring the idiotic sand howl tigers after him, so the team was able to move forward safely. The journey was thus mostly free of danger, and they eventually arrived at the drifting sand river. The drifting sand river was, in fact, a dry valley running down from the high grounds nearby, which had become incredibly wide under the erosion of the wind. Even on the map, the drifting sand river resembled a long soil-colored snake winding through the drifting sand river region. Its length extended through half of Gansu, and its narrowest part was still more than 10 kilometers wide. Chapter 463 Dreadful River. Throughout this long drifting sand river dwelled horrifying creatures called the White Sand Demon. Looking ahead while standing on the edge of the Gobi Desert was a descending dry slope. Although they called it a river, it seemed more like an ocean in everyone's eyes as it followed the descending continental shelf. This sand was covered in very thin and winding white sand silt. The sizes of these silt dunes looked like waves within a white ocean. Didn't they say that this place had white sand demons dwelling around? Why haven't I seen a single one of them? Zhang Xiaohou used his hand to shade his eyes as he surveyed the area from an elevated position. Everyone also had some doubts in their hearts. At this moment, they could still see the white silt a couple of kilometers away from them. There was nothing moving within the silt. Other than the occasional layer of white waves being blown by the wind, there was nothing else moving. At this moment, Ling Ling finished extracting the internal organs of the sand howl tiger. She gave them to Zhang Xiaohou, who was standing next to her, and said, "Here, throw this into the distance." Zhang Xiaohou gathered his strength and threw the innards far into the river of dust and sand. After they landed, waves of silt suddenly exploded forth within the tranquil white scene. Several 3-meter-tall giant-like creatures stood up while supporting themselves with broadswords made from sand. They all began to surround the smelly, bloody organs. After they cautiously examined them, they all turned back into sand that sprinkled all over the drifting sand river. The entire process took just a couple of seconds. The serene ground with white sand had suddenly turned into over 40 white giants with broadswords, who then returned back to the sands and restored the peaceful scene. This shocked everyone. There were quite a number of creatures appearing from just such a small disturbance. If a whole group of us were to go there, wouldn't there be a whole white sand demon squad appearing? Zhang Xiaohua asked, his shock totally visible. Mo Fan and Zhao Manyan nodded their heads after nearly peeing themselves from surprise. Fortunately, they didn't step right in. Who would have expected so many white sand demons to explode forth in front of them? Let's set a camp by the riverside and rest. It's about to become dark. It won't be too late if we were to set out first thing tomorrow, Lingling advised. No one was better at setting up the camp than Zhang Xiaohou. It was as though this guy was on steroid. He would have leftover energy every single day, and it seemed like he was familiar with doing everything. While everyone was resting, Zhang Xiaohou had already finished setting up the tent for everyone. There were 2 tents in total, and separated by gender. Mo Fan walked up to the Swift Star Wolf. He used his hand to comb the fur on the Swift Star Wolf's neck while he asked Xinxia, who was sitting on top of the wolf, "Are you tired?" Xinxia shook her head. Just when she was about to open her mouth, the Swift Star Wolf raised his head in annoyance, as if he was saying that should have been a question asked of him. Mo Fan couldn't help but smile as he patted the Swift Star Wolf's head. The Swift Star Wolf was doing lots of labor. Not only did he carry Xinxia, he also had to carry the little undeveloped lowly, Lingling. Lingling was petite, while Xinxia's physique was very slim. The 2 girls together were probably not as heavy as Mo Fan. What the Swift Star Wolf found was very annoying was that he could not fight in the same way as he usually did. Those white sand demon look like they only want to protect their own territory. Their characteristics are not as vicious as the sand-roaring tiger. I should be able to appease them, Xinxia said with a smile on her face. Seeing the beads of sweat on her forehead, Mo Fan still took pity on her. However, he was able to tell that she was very happy. She had come to a place that she had never been to before, and it was also her first time being able to fight with Mo Fan shoulder to shoulder. The curtain of the night descended quickly. The temperature difference between day and night in Gobi Desert was extremely big. As the last little bit of heat retreated from this white ground, a hint of cold silently assaulted them. The 3 girls were already sleeping inside the tent. The 3 guys were alternating the duty of night watch. Mo Fan was in charge of the latter period of the night. When he woke up, he immediately felt as though he was in a different world. This kind of cold, along with the unrestrained vicious wind striking his body, felt like a blade was cutting right through his skin. Mo Fan lit up a ball of fire, and then casually threw it onto the ground to form a small bonfire. He was bored as he repeatedly extinguished the fire and reignited it, and this continued for about an hour. Suddenly, Mo Fan heard something moving in the distance. Although he had excellent night vision, the sky was still filled with white dust. This lowered visibility by a lot. Mo Fan woke Zhang Xiaohou up and had him guard the tents. He started toward the area the sounds came from. The noises in the distance sounded like footsteps. They came one after another. Who knew how many creatures were currently walking through the Gobi Desert? Mo Fan arrived at a stone wall. He didn't go through it, instead looking through the small cracks in the stone. Fortunately, his field of view to the front was not blocked by the white dust. He could clearly see a small group of sand-roaring tigers moving beneath the moonlight. Their roars were ear-splitting. As their feet hit the ground trembled constantly. As he looked further along, he saw a group of hunter magicians running for their lives, clearly extremely frightened. There was a total of about 6 or 7 sand-roaring tigers. If such a group appeared, they would also force Mo Fan's squad to scatter and run. Mo Fan was able to clearly identify 2 of the people in the hunter-magician squad. It was the mean girl with tan skin and the leader with the black beard. They already lost their path in their panic, their escape route bringing them toward the drifting sand river. Not too long after, they finally hit the white silt of the drifting sand river. They did not stop at all as they ran 400 to 500 meters deep into the area. At the same time, the the sand-roaring tigers that pursued them suddenly halted by the river's edge, all standing at a place at the very edge. Even though it looked like they really wanted to wolf down those human magicians, they did not dare to take even a single step forward. They were all staring restlessly. They were filled with regret and anger, feeling like ducks had escaped from their mouths. Just when Mo Fan was puzzled over why those sand-howl tigers, known to be so vicious in nature, had suddenly stopped pursuing them, a terrifying scene appeared in the drifting sand river, shocking him yet again. He saw rows of white sand demons rising from the white sands. The sand in their hands had turned into large broadswords as they chopped down on the group of hunter magicians. The hunters let out wild screams before the skies were instantly filled with blood. Chapter 464 Panic in the River. The 3-meter-tall white sand demons were lined up in 4 and 5 rows, completely surrounding the hunters that had trespassed into the drifting sand river, leaving them no way to escape. Rows of white sand sabers dropped onto the targets. These sabers were not sharp like normal weapons, but extremely blunt, more like clubs. The slashes were actually smashing the hunters instead. As a result, it turned into a gory scene, with flesh and blood flying everywhere. The moonlight was a mix of blue and white, while the drifting sand river was white like rice, making the pools of blood on the ground even more obvious and terrifying. Mo Fan's eyes popped open. Even though he did not have the urge to save the hunters, they had died an extremely quick death. The defense from their spells was not weak, yet they still stood no chance against the weapons of the white sand demons. Their defense was crushed instantly, as their cries of agony echoed in the wide desert. "My God!" Zhao Manyan's soft exclamation came from behind Mo Fan. Mo Fan turned around and saw everyone had woken up and followed him from their tents. Xinxia and Chen Yi covered their mouths with their hands, while Ling Ling stared with her eyes wide. It was obvious that they had witnessed everything. The drifting sand river was a lot more terrifying than they had imagined. The hunters were like commoners jumping into a river filled with violent sharks, and were torn to pieces within seconds. "Why don't we treat this as a holiday trip to Dunhuang? Let's go back to where we belong," murmured Zhao Manyan, feeling his scalp turning numb and his limbs going soft. Zhao Manyan had learned from the secret tipping scrolls that the drifting sand river was considered one of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the Dunhuang region. Many hunters had lost their lives here, but when Zhao Manyan witnessed it with his own eyes, he could clearly feel his soul trembling in fear. If it weren't for the hunters that were chased into the drifting sand river by the sand-howl tigers, their party would have ended up as the one enjoying a quick trip to the netherworld. Don't we still have Xinxia with us? Maybe it won't be that bad." Even the fearless Zhang Xiaohou began to stammer. Chen Yi and Xinxia remained silent for quite a long time, needing some time to recover after witnessing such a gory scene. Sometime later, Chen Yi looked at Xinxia with wide eyes and said, "Can your psychic element really calm the demon beasts down? If something goes wrong, won't we end up like them?" Xinxia nodded seriously after a brief thought and said softly, "The white sand demons in that area are irascible because it's stained with blood, so it's not the best idea to go through that area. However, as long as we are walking through the areas that do not have the smell of blood, I can guarantee that they won't attack us. Even if you say so, I'm still uncomfortable. We'll all be dead if something goes wrong," said Zhao Manyan coldly. Ling Ling cast a disdainful gaze at the two cowards and spoke calmly, "That bunch of idiots dug their own graves when they startled so many sand-howl tigers at the same time, and on top of that, they were stupid enough to trespass into the drifting sand river. They might have a chance at surviving if they decided to fight against the sand-howl tigers, but once they stepped into the drifting sand river and caused such a scene, it was no different than jumping into hell themselves. All we need to do is be extremely cautious, and with Sister Xinxia's psychic element, we will only be crossing a dried river." Meanwhile, Xinxia had recovered from her fear. She said confidently, "It won't be a problem if we follow the original plan. However, you all must remember, don't cast any spells without my permission in the drifting sand river. Once they sense the ripple of a destructive spell, they will instinctively attack us. When that happens, we'll lose control of the situation." Zhao Manyan and Chen Yu nodded. They clearly knew that it was unrealistic to try fighting the demon beasts in the drifting sand river, but with a psychic, everything would be fine. Everyone went back to the tents with a perturbed mind, and none of them managed to get a good night's sleep. After all, the drifting sand river was only less than 20 meters from them. Who knew if the terrifying white sand demons would attack those on the shore in the morning? Everyone bore their uneasiness until morning, as the red sun rising in the east shone its rays down on the drifting sand river. The blood of the group of hunters had dried up in the wind, but the stains were as clear as before under the crimson light, reminding them that the enormous white sand river was not as calm as it appeared, but rather a place with a slim chance of survival. "Why don't someone among us go and try it out? It's better than the whole squad getting wiped out," Zhao Manyan asked weakly. "I think that's a great idea, as everyone would be convinced that the plan works." "The question is, who's going to do it?" replied Mo Fan, with a hint of mischievousness. Zhang Xiaohou clearly knew it was not the best time to volunteer himself. He gave Zhao Manyan the chance to do the honor. Zhao Manyan felt like giving himself a slap to the face. Was he too bored after filling his stomach? What was he thinking, voicing such a suggestion? He still had a glimpse of hope, and said to Zhang Xiaohou smilingly, "You're a brave soldier, with 2 movement spells. You can run away if something goes wrong. I'll let you do it." Zhang Xiaohou waved his hands and said to Zhao Manyan sternly, "Brother Fan has told me that your defense is like a 1,000-years-old turtle. I bet even if the white sand demons appeared, your defense is able to last long enough for us to come and rescue you." Zhao Manyan glanced at Mo Fan pleadingly. Mo Fan shrugged and said seriously, "I'm the party's DPS. I'm sure that either of you two is a better candidate." Zhao Manyan wore a helpless look and turned around, glancing at Xinxia. "Go for it, it will be fine, as long as you remember that you must not cast any spell until I tell you otherwise, as it will only place you in grave danger," Xinxia said gently. Zhao Manyan braced himself and walked toward the drifting sand river. Anxiety was not the only thing he was feeling at that instant. He tiptoed his way forward, each step on the sand making his heart beat vigorously. He could hear the howling of the wind coming in his direction. In his eyes, it did not feel like a dried river, but a terrifying path to the netherworld. He had only taken a few steps when tides of white sand rose from his surroundings. More than 10 white sand demons appeared beside him out of nowhere. They stood imperiously, their bulky figures resembling samurai in white armor,